I have to admit that for the longest time, I couldn't think about what to talk about with regards to Holy Thursday. I mean, when it came to Palm Sunday, even like Good Friday and Easter Sunday, that stuff kind of came pretty quick. But again, when it came to Holy Thursday, a bit of a writer's block. But then I decided to look at the readings, and funny enough, that really helped. And so what kind of caught my attention wasn't so much the gospel, funny enough, but actually the first reading, the book of Exodus chapter 12, which tells the story of the Passover lamb. So as a matter of background, as you probably know, the Israelite people were enslaved in Egypt for the longest time, and the Egyptians were heavily steeped in idolatry. And so even though it sounds kind of weird, they believed that certain animals were the earthly embodiments of their gods. And so as a result, they worshiped such things as cats and dogs and crocodiles and sheep. Anyways, God the Father, in order to liberate his people, the holy people of God, from slavery in Egypt and by extension idolatry, he sent the prophet Moses, who in turn brought different plagues to Egypt, culminating, of course, in the sending of the angel of death. And so basically the whole idea behind this 10th plague was that the angel of death would kill the firstborn sons in the land of Egypt. The only exception being those sons living in homes upon which was smeared the blood of the paschal lamb, as a result of which the angel of death would pass over the sons living in these homes. But you see, here's where it gets kind of interesting, right? And so imagine you're a member of the Israelite people, right? And so you're talking to the prophet Moses, and Moses says, okay, now God the Father wants you to kill the animals that the Egyptians worship. And so you're thinking to yourself, well, that sounds kind of dicey, but okay, fine, we'll just do it in private in the backyard and good to go. In response to which Moses says, well, no, after you kill these animals, after you kill these lambs, you're supposed to smear the blood of the lambs on the doorposts of your homes. In response to which you probably say some variation of, oh no. Because of course you're imagining this thing playing out, right? And so the next morning, the Egyptians are going to wake up, they're going to discover there's a whole lot less sheep in the land of Egypt, and then they're going to look at the homes of the Israelite people and see they're all covered in blood of the lambs that they killed. As a result of which, now the Israelite people have to leave. They're forced to leave. And then even later on, when they're wandering in the desert in search of the promised land, and there's this temptation to go back to the land of Egypt, they'll realize that we can't. We can't do it because we killed their gods. And so if we go back there, they're going to kill us. But therein lies the point. And so in a certain sense, this story speaks to the fact that an important prerequisite to not just doing battle with sin, but waging war on sin and beating this thing to the ground, you need to burn your bridges. You need to rearrange your life in a dramatic sort of way such that the choice for sin doesn't exist because the option no longer exists. And so to further illustrate the point, the example that comes to mind is the example of Matt Fradd. And so basically a really notable Catholic speaker, speaks a lot about chastity and that sort of thing. And he was once posed the question, what would you say in retrospect to your younger 20-year-old self who was struggling at the time with pornography and that sort of thing? And so Matt Fradd thought about it for a second, and then he said, well, first of all, I would hug this guy, here's my 20-year-old self. I would tell him that he's loved. I would say that God loves him, and God knows your heart, right? He's not scandalized by your weakness or your struggle. He knows your heart, and his desire for you is a good desire, right? And so you can trust that, you can lean into that. But more to the point, this thing that you're doing, pornography, you don't need it anymore. You need to fire it. You need to say goodbye to it. And it's going to be difficult for a couple of reasons. First of all, because of obviously the compulsion aspect, but also because it's kind of like sending away an old friend. It's like saying to pornography, like, look, you tried to help, and in a certain sense you did kind of help, but right now you're kind of standing in the way. So I will mourn your loss, but at the same time, I need to say goodbye to you. I need to fire you to receive this new life that Christ wants to give to me. So there's that. Okay, one final example, and I'll kind of end with this. So I remember back in the day when I was doing my undergrad at the University of British Columbia, this sociologist came to speak to us about cohabitation, this practice of people living together before marriage. And so basically he was giving us a survey, this overall survey of the various studies dealing with the subject of cohabitation. And basically just to sum up what he was saying, first of all, he said 100% cohabitation is proven not to help in terms of building towards a long-term committed relationship, especially in the context of marriage, right? So it's 100% proven not to help. And in fact, quite the opposite. A lot of studies, a lot of literature would suggest that actually it hurts your chances of having a long-term committed relationship going forward in the future. And so sometimes you'll even hear percentages of like 30% or higher in terms of a 30% or greater chance of breaking up if you live together before you get married. Now, what's interesting is that even though there's a lot of different theories as to why this might be the case, one really popular theory is that cohabitation is lacking in this notion of commitment. And so the whole idea is that when I live together with someone before I'm married to them, the idea is that I can always back away. I can always leave. If things become difficult, if I find something about you I don't like, I can always leave because what's lacking is commitment. Whereas in contrast, when it comes to marriage, there obviously is commitment. And so the whole idea is that even though there might be difficult moments, difficult conversations, a difficult season even, I'm going to stay with you. I won't give up because I'm committed to you. I am loyal to you. I love you. You're my husband. You're my wife. So I will stay with you to the end. Now, the thing I want to suggest to you is that even though that might sound kind of weak and pathetic in the eyes of the world, because the world will say, obviously, look, you can leave at any time when things become difficult, in reality, it's quite the opposite, right? And so if you have an appetite and the fortitude, quite frankly, to navigate through, again, difficult conversations and difficult seasons and moments in life, that's actually the prerequisite to having rich conversations, deep relationships. And that's a principle to be applied not just in the context of marriage, but also friendships, working relationships, even parish life. Because in this, you're actually imitating the Sacred Heart of Jesus, especially as you find it in the context of the Last Supper. And so you think about Christ the Lord in this particular circumstance. He's surrounded by betrayal, hypocrisy, and sin. His number one guy is going to deny him 3 times, the last time to a mere servant girl. One of his 12 has already betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver, and all of them, without exception, they will run from him. They will leave him abandoned on this very night. And yet he remains committed. He remains faithful. He remains resolute in terms of loving them to the end. And in this, he's teaching them something really important. It's something they'll learn to pay forward in the future. Because I have this deep and rich experience of being loved in my weakness, being loved in my sinfulness, I will learn in time to pay it forward, to love other people as Christ has loved me, to love people to the end. And may God bless you all.